Welcome everyone, I'm really excited for today's lesson. We're going to be making homemade corn tortillas. We're going to be using masa, which is essentially ground corn that is soaked in lime water, which helps your body digest the corn better and also gives it a better flavor. And then after we make the corn tortillas, we're going to make homemade corn tortilla chips. So at this step, we're going to get a large mixing bowl. We're going to add in our dry ingredients. First is the masa into the bowl. Then we're going to add our salt. And I'm just going to use my hands to kind of mix it all together, get it all equally distributed throughout before I add in my liquids. Now I'm going to pour in my water here. This is some warm water, and I'm going to mix it with my hands. Your hands are going to get pretty messy, but this is the way to do it, because what you're doing is you're fully hydrating the corn flour with the water. And so you want to almost make sure every little grain of masa gets touched by the water. So you're going to be mixing with your hands, kind of squeezing it through your hands and forming a nice dough. Now I'm going to add some more water here. You want to make sure it's really, really hydrated as you do this, because essentially you're moving from something that's really grainy into something that's very smooth and malleable. After kneading this for about 3 to 5 minutes, I'm going to let it rest, and I'm going to put a towel over it to keep the moisture inside of it. Now after about 20 minutes of resting there and the water fully hydrating, it's really nice texture. It's not as grainy as it used to be, and we're ready to start. So I'm going to take a plastic bag, and this is important because we're going to be putting our tortillas between the plastic bags so they do not stick on the tortilla press. And you can use a plastic bag, Ziploc or whatever you have at your house. Just make sure it's clean. And we're going to put this into our tortilla press. Now if you don't have a tortilla press, I'm going to show you an alternative here in just a second. Hang on. So I'm going to put one sheet of plastic down. I've shaped some of the dough into a small ball, and I put it in between the two, and I'm going to press it. Now it's ready for the pan. Now if you don't have a tortilla press at home, here's an alternative you can try. Kind of the same principle. I've grabbed something flat. I have this glass Tupperware type thing, and I'm just kind of pressing it down. It doesn't make as nice of a shape, but you get the general idea. Something flat, you can push it down. So into the pan there, and the pan is nice and hot. It's been preheating for quite some time. My good friend Evan is helping me out with this step. He is really good at making these, and so you can see here he's putting his hand directly into the frying pan, which is a huge no-no in Mr. Essel's class. He has reassured me this is the only way to do it, let me tell you, he said. But as my students, I would recommend that you use a silicone spatula or a silicone tong, something that won't scratch your pan. You can see here the heat is causing some air to rise inside the tortilla, and that's one way you can kind of tell that it's done, and also by the coloring. So after they are finished, we have them in a warm towel, which keeps them moist, and you can eat these with your meal. But we are going to cut them up and make homemade tortilla chips. You can see it's still steaming there. Let it cool down a little bit. I'm going to move it to a cutting board, and I'm going to cut them with a large knife. Be careful while you are cutting these. And I'm going to cut these into fourths, which will make the perfect size tortilla strip. For this step, you are going to be heating a large amount of oil over the stove. About 1 inch. I'm using canola oil. You can also use vegetable oil. Very important, students, for this step. You really must have parental supervision to do this. Oil on the stove is a huge cause of kitchen fires. So when you're doing this, make sure you have a lid close by and a fire extinguisher. Remember, never put water on an oil or grease fire. So while you're waiting for that to heat up, I would put some paper towels in a large bowl to soak up the grease and collect the chips as they finish. I'm using a thermometer here to check my temperature. You want to make sure your oil is between about 350 degrees and 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Dropping the chips into the oil, they'll start to pop and sizzle as they're in the oil. That is just the moisture leaving the chip. Make sure you are protecting yourself and being safe and monitoring the temperature of the oil. You will need to periodically check in the oil temperature using your thermometer to let you know if the oil is hot enough or too hot. You don't want to get the oil too hot, but you also don't want to have the oil too low like it is right here, so I'm having to adjust my heat. If the oil gets too low, It will soak up a lot of the oil into the chip and you're gonna have a really, really greasy chip. You should be using metal tongs to do this, and as your chips turn the color you want, which is a light golden brown, you can start removing them about one at a time. Shake off that excess oil back into the pot. And this is ready. You can see the color is really nice. We're putting them into our paper towel lined bowl. As your chips are cooling off there, it's very important you recognize how to properly dispose of all that cooking oil that you've been using. So the first step is let it cool in the pot. After it's room temperature, you should pour it into a disposable container, like a big plastic container that you've been using that the oil came in, or another sort of container. Put it in a plastic bag and then throw it in your garbage. Do not, I repeat, do not pour it down your sink, in your toilet, or just dump it into the trash. That's a huge problem waiting to happen. They've cooled off quite a bit and now they're in my bowl and I'm salting them, kind of mixing them around with my hands, twirling around in my bowl, trying to be fancy. You can use any kind of seasoning you want. Suggest that you eat them with some nice, fresh salsa. This makes a great snack. Watching TV, watching a football game, whatever it is you're doing. Enjoy.